Hi everybody. So today we're going to be talking about the parts of the brain, or the lobes of the brain. And so let's go ahead and get started. And what the first picture I'm going to draw, it's going to be a picture as if you're looking at the brain from this angle. You're looking at the brain from the side. So it would look something like this. And my brain's going to come around like this. It would look something like that. And then this would be a picture of what I'm about to draw, as if you were looking at the brain from the top of the head. So imagine someone's laying like this. You take off their skull and you look into this structure here. And it would look like this. It's in two parts. Okay, so it looks something like this here. Okay, so really quick, what this is called, the big part of the brain, is called your cerebrum. Okay, so there's my cerebrum. And the cerebrum is made up of a right and left cerebral hemisphere. So here's my right cerebral hemisphere. And this would be my left cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so there we go. So there's our right and left cerebral hemisphere make this up. Now the reason you don't see it here is, again, you're just looking at from this angle. So you're kind of looking at that from almost like this angle here. Okay, so now here's the thing with the brain, is in the center of the brain, in the center of the cerebrum, we have something called the central sulcus. Okay, so this is the central sulcus. Now a sulcus is basically a shallow depression that's between gyri. Gyri are solid parts of the brain. I'm going to demonstrate some in just a minute. Sulci are the shallow depressions between the gyri. So what the central sulcus does is it distinguishes the anterior brain from the posterior brain. Anterior brain from posterior brain. Okay, so that's what the central sulcus does. It's going to distinguish the anterior from the posterior. So everything from here forward is the front of the brain, or the anterior brain. Everything from here back is the posterior brain. So, like I said, you have solid parts of the brain. That's the part you're used to seeing, the part that looks real squiggly and wormy-like. And those are called gyri. So, in front of the central sulcus, we have a gyri, or gyrus. Gyrus is singular, gyri is plural, right? And we're going to call this, because it's in front of the central sulcus, we're going to call this the precentral gyrus, okay? And then behind this, if we have a precentral gyrus, we must have that's one word, sorry. Behind this is the post-central gyrus. Okay, so this would be my post-central gyrus right here. Okay, and that's it right there. Okay, and again, you have these all over the brain, and you have sulci all over the brain too. So let's start talking about the lobes here. Oh, wait, let me come over here. So just to demonstrate that over here, this again would be my central sulcus. All right, there's my central sulcus. This would be my precentral gyrus right here. All right, and part of the reason I'm demonstrating this is simply because you can see it's on both sides. And here's my post-central sulcus. Right. I'm sorry, my post-central gyrus is right there. Now, let's start looking at some other lobes here. And the first one I want to start with is the temporal lobe. So we're going to start down in here with the temporal lobe. And that's on the side, of the by your ear down here. You probably heard people say before, they're rubbing their temples. So this is my temporal lobe. Okay, that's the temporal lobe that's right there. So the next thing is, let me color this in. Okay. And then if I were to draw it over here, I would draw it like like this and like that. Okay, so that's going to be my temporal lobe. So now, the next thing we have is, like we said, everything that's anterior to this sulcus, the central sulcus, is the frontal lobe, or is anterior. So this is going to be my frontal lobe right here. And then we said everything posterior to the central sulcus is going to, everything behind the central sulcus is posterior. It's in the posterior part of the brain. So I'm just going to draw a little line right there, and then I'm going to show, this is called our parietal lobe right here. Okay, so this is the parietal lobe. Okay, so that's my parietal lobe. And then if I were to draw it over here, this would also be the parietal lobe here. And let me go ahead and throw in my frontal lobe. Okay, and so if you notice now we have the space back here, and this is my occipital lobe back here. So just real quick, I'm going to go like this to show my parietal lobe, and then this right here is the occipital lobe, and I would have it back in here if we were looking from the top down. This is the part that you see with, is the occipital lobe. Okay, so once again, it's right there, and it's right over in here. Okay, so now, if you notice, between my two cerebral hemispheres, I actually have a big opening right here. Okay, and this big opening right here is known as the longitudinal fissure. So it just means like it's a big long opening that we have right there. And then in the longitudinal fissure, oops, I almost dropped my pen there. In the longitudinal fissure, we have axons that go across here. Okay, and the axons are going to help the right and left cerebral hemispheres communicate with each other. And this is called the corpus callosum. Okay, so there's my corpus callosum. Now let's go back to over here, look at some things that are a little bit different here. So what we say is that hanging off the back of the cerebrum, you have something called the cerebellum. So this is the cerebellum right here. Okay, and like I said, so it contains the word bell, because a lot of people get cerebrum mixed up with cerebral, because I'm sorry, with cerebellum, because we also have cerebral. So basically what we say is the cerebellum hangs like a bell off the back of the brain. Now in front of the cerebellum, we have here's the midbrain. All right, so there's the midbrain. Then underneath the midbrain, we have something called the pons. All right, this is the pons. And then after the pons, we have something called the medulla oblongata, and we'll go through all these. This is medulla oblongata. Okay, and then after the medulla oblongata, we have the spinal cord. So this is my spinal cord right here. So basically, the medulla oblongata connects the brain to the spinal cord. And so if I take these three things here, if I take the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla, these three make up, let me just make this a little clearer. If I take these three make up the brainstem. Okay, and we're going to be talking about all of these in other videos. So that's it right now for the lobes of the brain, and of course I went into the brainstem here and a little bit about the corpus callosum and what connects the right and left cerebral hemisphere. Thank you very much for watching.